All right, everybody. Tonight I got on Kirk Eddleman, one of the legends of the paddling community. This is actually pretty exciting for me. I know I've talked to you, on some takeouts and stuff like that for brief moments, but never really dived into kind of your life and stuff like that. So I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Yeah, man.
Um, Kirk,
Glad to be here.
for those who don't know a lot about you, can you kind of introduce yourself and some background and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was born and raised in East Tennessee. I've lived in Knoxville, Tennessee my whole life. Went to University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Um, I currently live about 6 miles from where I grew up, so pretty much the ultimate homeboy. But yeah, I travel a lot, so I get around, but love calling Knoxville home. My dad got me into paddling when I was a kid, just doing like tandem canoeing and stuff. And when I was at UT, I joined the paddling clubs, a really good program, and just started running with it pretty much right when I was a freshman. I'd done a little bit of paddling in a kayak up until that point, but that was really when I kind of had the opportunity to just run wild with it. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. Tennessee boy. I would see. I've tried to convince my wife to move there lately, and she won't do it. I told her it's amazing. There's so many rivers around.
Now, where are
Uh,
you living at?
I live in Lynchburg, Virginia, which not a
Okay.
ton around here. If we get some like flash flooding, there's some decent micro creeks. I kind of grew up on Balcony Falls on the James River, if you know what that is.
I do know what that is. I
Uh,
haven't done it, but I had the old Monty Smith Southeastern Whitewater guidebook when I first started. I picked that up, and that was one of the runs that I was like, "Oh, I could do that." It was a little far away, but
Yeah,
yeah,
man. I mean, I started when I was 9 and in that area, and I had some good play boating at different levels. So I kind of grew up a play boater, but like when I started getting into creeking, I guess like 2 years ago with Wade and stuff, like that was a whole new ball game. So, but I had those like fundamental skills, that play boating gives you, and river running in general. But yeah,
I think that's huge, man. I started as a play boater too. I mean, when I first paddled at all, I was in like an Animus. I remember paddling RPM, a Pre-on Fly, that kind of stuff. But my first boat I actually bought was when the Wave Sport EZ just came out, and this was like in the midst of the full slice revolution,
oh wow,
and
so you're ahead of me. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
41.
41. So yeah, I'm 39, but I guess paddling I started before you. So like my
We're
first,
about the same
I
same age,
I
yeah.
was so small at the time. My first boat was actually a squirt boat, but it was like a actual kayak for me.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
my first plastic boat was a Dagger Blast,
Okay,
and then my
yeah.
first play boat was a Piranha Razor. So that's kind of how I grew up.
Wow,
then
yeah,
then
yeah.
I took a nice hiatus there in college for like 7 years. I honestly didn't paddle at all. So from like age 18 to like 25, I really did nothing. Um,
Yeah,
and then kind of once I graduated, got married and stuff, kind of got back into it. So there you go. That's kind of my life in a nutshell. But yeah, that's awesome, man. So you start out with the easy kind of full slicing it. That's pretty cool. So what kind of like made you kind of really like get motivated to start running some crazy stuff?
I mean, you know, I had old LVM videos when I started paddling. LVM one came out, so my whole progression kind of came up just watching that whole LVM crew, um, shredding hard in the southeast, going to California, going to BC, going all over the world. So I knew that stuff was out there. I really had my doubts that I was going to do a lot of that stuff, but I loved playboating starting out, and so my goal was just to cartwheel and surf and splat and just bow stall, stern stall, and just look at the sky, and that was super fun for me. And ended up on the Ocoee and forged my skills there, and got a creek boat. I remember I was creeking on Tremont in an EZ and realized that I needed to get a creek boat, and I didn't know how to boof. Like, yeah, I just didn't know how to creek at all. So I got Micro 230 from Tyler Boeing in Nashville, and started creeking. Sucked at it for quite a while. So it wasn't as readily apparent how you're supposed to do everything
Yeah,
at that
and
time.
people didn't have the luxury of these nice like modern bow rockers and boats to take care of you either. I
Yeah,
remember.
just watching people who are practitioners now and just masters, uh, you know, it's come a long way. It's still got a long ways to go. I think it's hard to you can't say where it's going to go. No one can predict the future, but I can only assume we're not done and there's more to figure out, but
Absolutely, yeah. I'm always like, what can they come out with next? Like, they have reached the top of the line of boat design, then it's like they figure out something that's better. I don't know. It's pretty crazy to me. I thought that like 15 years ago with play boats. Like, what else can they do?
yeah. And I mean, it bounces back and forth between the paddlers and the boats, the boats kind of prevented paddlers from easily doing certain things. I mean, you look at the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, no one was running waterfalls like with Chark and Edge and had any like pitch control, right? Just going straight over neutral, trying to not go over the bars, trying not to land flat. Um, but people started charking, figure out how to use that to really control your pitch on waterfalls and, lifting the bow and everything. I mean, which came first, the ability to do it or the boats that allowed you to do it? I think it's a little bit of both. Just
Yeah.
kind of bounces back and forth from skill progression and boat design progression. And it's hard to see where you're going next, but it's easy to trace the path back and be stoked about how it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, all that stuff's crazy to me. I think my first kind of creek boat was the Nano. Again, that was kind of when I got back into it when I was like 25, and I was like, the shorter the better. But now I'm like paddling longboats. So that's something I actually had to get used to, like even in this past year or so, just paddling longer, bigger boats.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt the same thing, kind of coming from play boating to creeking.
Yeah. I mean, I was paddling a micro 230, CFS. The Nomad was like a game changer. And yeah, and I've gone down the road of the 9R and the Alpha. Those are just narrow, long, fast boats. Almost everything. We've been in this 9-foot craze for a while. People are starting to back it off though. You got to be compact too.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got the West Prongs, a local run, and the Smokies, and anything over 9 feet out there is a little ornery. You need something slower, more compact, able to squeeze into tight spaces. And so yeah, they continue to refine, and there's so many good boats, so many variations out there depending on what you're really trying to do. So
Yeah, that's why I think I have like 13 boats right now, because I'm like, I don't want to
yeah,
sell that one because I might run that river one day, which is the only river I'd run the boat on, which is kind of absurd to keep that many boats for, but
I
yeah.
hear you. Yeah, no, I'm actually in that situation right now. I'm getting a handful of boats here in the next couple of months, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to sell to
Yeah, I know.
justify, you know.
I just got RMX and I just had to sell my Scorch X, which I didn't really want to do, but
Yeah,
gotta make room, gotta make room. But
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
cool, man. So who did you kind of first start running with when you started paddling, or who did you look up to? Obviously you said your dad got you into boating, but like kind of friend wise, or like people your age, or
Yeah, I had
okay.
a friend of mine just kind of like went to some local paddling schools. We didn't know much. I mean, I had done some of this before, but we were total newbies. And I met this guy Malcolm Tobias out of Knoxville. He was my paddling instructor at a local school, and he just kind of kept taking me paddling a little bit after that. Just kind of gave me several more opportunities to get out with someone that knew what they were doing. So he taught me a bit. Um, and then once I was at UT and I was paddling a lot, I got hooked up with Toby McDermott, who grew up in Knoxville. He lives in Nashville now, but I was a bit older than he was, and he needed someone to drive to the river a lot of times. So I
There
was
you
Toby's ride,
go.
and he would show me down stuff. He took me down the green for my first time, which was definitely like an infamous experience. And yeah, just toured me around a bit. And then really once I was at UT for a while, I just started getting a good collection of friends that we're all kind of in the same place, chasing hard. We started exploring creeks. We started going to the green regularly. Um, Eventually started, taking trips out west, and just, started expanding into living, breathing, sleeping, eating, kayaking. Yeah.
That's wild. So like, did you take a break off school and kind of do that kind of stuff before you, or how'd that kind of
Man,
go?
I went straight into school at UT in the geology program, right out of high school. But after 3 years, I took a year off because I was just so into paddling, and I just wanted to see, what can I do if I just spend all my time paddling? And I was just waiting tables to pay the bills and just kayaking every single day and working every single night. Um, Went back, finished, got my degree. So I did have I guess, kind of what people call a gap year. And it was enough to realize I loved it and I wanted to keep doing it, but also enough to realize that, I need to go back, finish school, and kind of, see what other kind of opportunities I could develop. So,
Yeah, I think that's a big conundrum. Among a lot of the younger paddlers are really, really good nowadays. Shane, for one of them, I know him pretty well, and he's kind of like he's finishing up his engineering degree, but he's like, oh man, I kind of want to take a break before I start a job and go travel and kayak. So he's kind of in between, like, should I do that? Should I not? I'm like, that's up
yeah,
to
yeah,
personal decision, obviously, pros and cons of each thing. Because you never know.
yeah.
Life is so
Well,
short, you just never know.
yeah. And when you're young, uh, I mean, I never really took the endless summer tour, in my 20s. Most full-time lifer paddlers, they take that like sabbatical journey, when they're in their early, mid, even late 20s, and they go to California. They just spend 3 or 4 months paddling. I mean, I was pretty local, and in school, and I had to work, pay the bills, and so once a year I'd do like a week long to 10-day trip typically out to California, but also BC, the Northwest, and stuff, and just to try to get some of that experience. But now that I'm teaching and just paddling full time, I mean, I'm probably on the West Coast, 2 or 3 months out of the year paddling. And, the fact that my wife and son both love paddling and rock climbing and just that outdoor lifestyle, like I'm getting all that and more now in my late 30s, early 40s. Uh, and I thought, oh, I'd never get to do that. But here I am now. I'm spending way more time doing what I want to be doing. So
That's
it's been a
incredible.
slow marinade and a little bit of stubbornness and obsession, and here we are. So
So,
it's
are you
pretty
are you a
awesome.
school teacher?
I'm a kayak
Oh,
instructor.
kayak instructor. Okay, I didn't know what
Yeah,
you meant
yeah,
by teaching. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you
yeah. No,
get to teach kayaking and go kayaking. That's even better.
I mostly teach kayaking. Every once in a while, I go kayaking too. No,
Well,
I love it, man. I love my job. I'm not tired of it, and I've been doing it for almost 8 years now, and it just keeps getting better and better. I kind of focus on building out my calendar and keeping it full of people who are stoked, and um, it's just been awesome. I can't believe it. It gets richer every year. I keep adding little elements, little seasonal or geographic, just additions to what I'm doing on an annual basis that just make it richer. And it's dynamic. It's never stale. So yeah, it's awesome. It's
you know
been
what?
great.
I didn't even know you taught kayaking. Is there like a place to go to reach out to you or?
Yeah, I work for Ace Kayaking School.
Okay.
Joe Gudger owns Ace Kayaking School, and I'm just partnered up with him. And I've kind of got a Knoxville office. We don't really have any brick and mortar up here, but it's just my van and my boats and me just
Yeah.
driving all over the place. But we work up in the Obed, Big South Fork, Ocoee, lots of places. Um, yeah, and it's fun, man. I get to just build build the program the way I want to. It's
Yeah, I mean,
fun for
honestly,
me.
I think that's one of my ultimate goals. I'm a school psychologist, so I work in school, so I don't get
Yeah,
summers off. I don't get a whole lot of time off. I only get like 2 weeks off, which kind of stinks. But um, yeah, I mean, I coach wrestling for 10 years and stuff, and like I agree with you. Like coaching is one of the best things. Like it's so rewarding. You get to see people grow. You get to see people achieve their goals. Psychology is rewarding too, but man, coaching is just a whole nother level, like connection with people, rapport, and yeah, just seeing people achieve their dreams after you've worked with them is incredible for sure.
yeah. It's I mean, when I picked up paddling, um, I was like a lot of people I see nowadays. I see a lot of young kids in their 20s and early 30s, and I was those kids, and what they are is they're just stoked and they're manic and they're just getting after it. And there's there can be a lot of selfishness and just obsessive, over the top drive, chasing hard, you know, transactional relationships. people to run the shit with. And that was me for so long. And I just kind of fell into instruction. I was doing a couple other jobs at the time and just started working with Joe at Ace and just fell in love with it. And now, like, I mean, most of my paddling is about other people, and I prefer it that way. Like for
Yeah.
me, like I get so much out of watching people grow and be excited and set goals. And it's not always just like smooth sailing, like getting to these places we want to be, but like the struggle, being there with people when they're struggling and when they're feeling super stoked about, how they're doing. There's just a lot of rewards. So I've learned a lot from that personally. And then just, being an actual coach is something physical. I'm a better paddler than I've ever been. Like I'm 10 times better paddler now than I was 8 years ago when I started teaching. And I had already been boating for, 12, 14 years. So like just being an instructor and just spending that much time thinking about what we're doing and really breaking it down and trying to explain it to all different types of people and just throwing stuff at the wall, see what sticks. I've just got a lot of time to actually deep dive into technique and the philosophy and what's behind it all. And it's just an awesome experience. Yeah. So I'm getting dividends back personally, but it's really just about watching other people's experience and doing that with Alex and my family too. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, I know just being around you a little bit and talking with you, you're one of the most humble guys for like how good you are. Same goes for Alex. How good of a kid he is, and just how humble he is, and just he's really good. And I've seen some
Yeah.
kids that take that the opposite way. So I appreciate that as a father, and how you teach your kids to grow up. But yeah, that's crazy, man. That's incredible. That's awesome for you. My next question was actually like, what has kayaking done for your life, or besides just being a kayaker? But I think you kind of answered that, and the facts that what is kind of giving back to you, watching people grow and stuff. I mean, unless you have anything to add on that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I think for me, it keeps your mind body connection real tight and crisp. Um, it just feels good to have that connectivity and to feel healthy and physically active. And also, we do a lot of rock climbing, mountain biking. We do other stuff that has some overlap, whether it's flow or physical conditioning or aerobics. It's kind of a Venn overlap of what all those three sports do uniquely and what they share in common. But yeah, just that mind body connection and paddling of all those sports is definitely the most mental. And I love that about it. And that's what creates the inconsistency and the challenge and the sorrow. And that's what's also what creates these perfect little moments that you can just have one perfect moment. And that's, pretty awesome. But
So like with
yeah, man.
rock climbing, okay. So you were talking about the mental thing. So say you're free climbing or something somewhere and you get stuck. What's the difference between, or what's different similarities in that, and like say you're going down a rapid, get stuck in a rock, get pinned or something? Is there any differences in that situation, in those situations, or same
I
mentally?
think
Like,
I think there is, man. And there's all these communities are different. Um, I think in rock climbing, people's methodologies and protocols and practices, like what's considered safe and what people do, there's a progression of boldness for sure. So like there's super safe climbing, and generally the further you progress, the more you kind of jump into it. Still can be safe, but there's more objective hazards, and there's also like way more dynamic range of like risk analysis. But I think the issue with climbing is those protocols tend to be tighter because gravity does what it does without pause.
right,
It will 9.8 meters per second squared, guaranteed. So if you screw up and make a bad call or put yourself in an exposed situation, and then you don't have the skills to pay the bills and you fall, you're going to hit whatever you're going to hit. If it's 12 feet onto a ledge, you might break your ankles. But if you're 100 feet off the deck and you've really screwed something up, you're gonna deck. I think in paddling, As much, these rivers are indifferent. They're not sentient beings, and they do follow a super physical pattern with gravity. Incompressible fluid responding to gravity and obstacles in the way. That's the physics of it. But there's so much. I don't want to call it luck, but that's just our surrogate term without a better explanation. People get lucky all the time. I mean, we make bad decisions and just get away with it a
Yeah,
lot.
I agree.
And we can't. Becoming a rock climber has made me realize that as paddlers, we can definitely step up our game on like decision making and like process, and just have more bomber protocols for how we move down the river. And I don't think it has to be a buzzkill either. I think once you develop that pattern and that behavior, it's autonomic. You're not, you know, you're just getting it done in a safer, higher level way.
Hmm.
I think that's good style too. I don't think it's just, okay, let's keep people safe. I think that's good style, is when you do something safely and with like a high percentage confidence.
Makes sense. Totally. Yeah. I've never really thought about it and comparing the two, but now that you talk about it, yeah, absolutely. Cool. So what, I guess at what point were you like, "Hey man, I'm running the NAR. Like I'm stepping up to class 5 plus." Like what kind of made your mind shift from like, "All right, I'm doing these type of rivers," to "I'm running the NAR."
That's interesting, man. I think I was carried on a wave of stoke that was so thick and strong, um, that, I mean, there were moments throughout that progression where I was like, "Oh, I'm here. I'm doing these things with these people." Um, that's you know that's interesting. But so stoked, and I was really pushed to explore. Like, like, part of the reason I wrote these books is I just love seeing new places and exploring and doing new runs. And once you do all the easier, it was kind of like, okay, doing easy runs, okay, now let's do these harder runs. And then a lot of the most beautiful, dramatic, impressive places are some of the hardest places to paddle. There's a correlation there. And so it was me chasing these. I felt like I was motivated really by chasing these pure wilderness experiences that like had a lot of gravity as far as like decision making and like precision and confidence and like teamwork and all that. So I really geeked out on that, and the stoke just carried me there. And then there's been times where I've been there and some of that stoke subsides, and all of a sudden it's kind of like a proverbial looking down and realizing, oh, I'm way exposed right now. I've put myself in this place, and then the stoke kind of blips a little. It's not super strong for a moment, and then you realize, this is everything we asked for and a little more than we want, as Austin Rathman said one time.
That's how I felt
But
at Green Race this year in the race in the Chili. I was like, "Whoops."
yeah, oh yeah,
I didn't
and
expect it to be 13 inches when we started racing.
and
Uh,
I think if you make good decisions and you've trained and your heart's in what you're doing, there's always an element of risk. And there are those blips, those moments where you feel the air underneath you, you feel the exposure to consequence and fear and anxiety, all that kind of stuff. Um, I think that's part of the game. And learning how to deal with that is the mental game, and getting consistent, sitting with the fear and sitting with the uncertainty and still just continuing to operate. You know,
yeah,
it's
I totally agree with you with the exploration piece. I actually haven't done a lot of that at all, and I recently did it on the North Fork Tie here in Virginia. I don't know if you've ever heard of that run.
I have.
Um,
It was always on my list. I remember seeing pictures of like Gordon Dalton
yeah,
back in the
yeah,
day
and
running that.
unfortunately none of
Yep.
them could go the other day, so me and my buddies just kind of went up there, and we, it wasn't like out in the wilderness or anything like that, but it was honestly one of my first times where I've had to get out of the boat, go scout stuff on my own with no prior really knowledge, just kind
Yeah.
of see where to go. And honestly, it was very fulfilling. A 20-minute run takes 4 hours that way. I mean,
Well, it awakens your senses.
yeah.
I mean, when you're just following a bright, multicolored person in a multicolored boat in front of you, you're robbing yourself of like so much like engagement. And for me, paddling, in those environments is like max engagement. You're fully just dilated to all the inputs and like are taking them in, and you're just going to operate at a higher level when you're in that state. So
Totally.
yeah, that's what exploration is, you know.
Yeah, I would love to dive in some like actual wilderness type runs. I know. I think this winter I'm gonna try to just do some simple stuff like Chattooga overnight, just stuff like that. Get some filming of the rivers and stuff.
Yeah, man.
Kind of my thing going forward is gonna be doing some cinematic videos of all these, pretty much every river I can get my hands on that hasn't been done that way.
No,
So
I like what you're doing with that, and that's to me like the media. Yeah, I'm always most interested to see media, whether it's photography, videos, writing, whatever. That kind of puts the rivers and the natural environment as the protagonist, and we're just kind of you know, we're background actors, and
yeah,
um,
for
it's
sure.
easy to get stoked about who we are and what we're doing, but it's really the places we're doing it, and without the river, we're not. It's not that it's the river that makes it impressive, and
Oh, absolutely, man. The river's done so much for me. I mean, I was diagnosed with a stomach disease, kind of like similar to what Sarah Rulin had like 2 years ago. So, although I've been paddling my whole life and it's been something good, it literally like saved my life. It made me so I can eat a little more and stuff like that. So I try to go paddling as much as I can. And
yeah,
I know kayaking's just done so much for so many people. So yeah, that's something I want to do is just showcase nature and rivers and cinematography and videography and stuff. So, but yeah, anyway, that's kind of where the channel's headed, I guess. But it's taken me a while to learn those things. Learning cameras and stuff is not easy. In editing,
oh yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
especially when you're scared.
Yeah, yeah. I was on the Russell Fork when I got trashed in that machete, and I had like $6,000 of cameras in between my legs. I'm thinking, if I swim, I don't even care about the boat or paddle or my life. I just want the camera. But yeah,
Yeah, I've
um,
definitely brought my camera in between my legs on trips, and then you know get caught up in where we are, and it's feeling overwhelming, and I look down at the camera and I'm like, that thing's not coming out of that box
that's
today.
right. That's right. That's right. Oh gosh, man, this time's going by quick. All right, sorry, we're on the free version of Zoom here, people. So what would you say your like top three runs are for people personally?
uh, I mean, my personal top
Or
three
what you would
runs.
recommend for a top three run for that's manageable for most people, I guess. Maybe is a better thing to talk about.
So top runs that I would recommend to other people that are like what difficulty or just here in the southeast.
Top, like a class 5, but it's also kind of manageable. You don't have to hike in 10 miles or it's not like insanely dangerous. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, Overflow comes to mind when you said all that because it's just ultra classic. It's like the original classic. It's
Yeah,
beautiful
I haven't done
Chattooga
that one.
scenery. Yeah, no BS, no portages. Yeah, just good blend of kayaking. I feel like Linville Gorge is like the ultimate run in the southeast for sure, but it's not casual. It's more dangerous than the average class 5, and
Absolutely.
it's got the most great. I mean, it's got the most. It's got like 6 or 7 nonstop miles of class 5 kayaking, which is pretty. And just the setting that it's in is like nothing else in the South. I think the Bear is probably like the best kayaking. The
Bear
Bear
Creek.
in Lookout Mountain is like the best class 5 creeking in the Southeast. Maybe the whole East Coast. But I like the Raven Fork too. To me, the Raven Fork's like a really spiritual, clean,
Yeah,
pristine
it looks
place.
awesome. All those I want to get on for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody has their list, but 2 kids,
yeah.
work, full time work. I'd be lucky to get out once every 3 weeks. So
I like the drives too. The pigeon drives are like that's kind of the big. To me, that's the big sob story. If you try to pick, okay, there's all these rivers that are dammed up.
oh
Which
gosh,
if you could just have one, if you could just pull one dam, for me it'd be Waterville in a heartbeat because yeah, I'd own land in Hartford, Tennessee. I mean, it run 300 days a year at low, in a drought, you're banging down at like Watauga 250. And then when it's running normally, it's Russell Fork plus level push. And then, you got the high level days,
Drives are
it would
awesome.
just be such a resource. So it's a bummer they just turned the generators back on.
I know it's like almost the drives became like the green for a couple weeks there. People were just flocking to it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. Yep.
Um, yeah, sorry, we got like 5 minutes. So,
All good.
sorry. What would you say the most top three, or most not necessarily top three, but most important skills in kayaking are? Like, if you had to give people a couple hints or a couple suggestions of what to do, what to practice, it's the main things.
Well, the big obvious one is the roll, and it's just kind of the roll. Having a solid combat roll is just a boundary that separates two different worlds, and so we're trying to push through that's important to me. Like it's kind of a survival skill, but to me, like the act of moving the boat around, I would say like understanding charging arc, um, the idea that we're always on an edge, we're pushing, but the water's pushing us, and it's the combination of those pushes that creates curvature. And that's how we boof. That's how we control our pitch on a waterfall. That's how we pierce eddies. That's how we carry through anything. Having a good forward stroke is like our actual mechanism to add our own power. And no one's forward stroke is perfect. It could always be better. So I think that's a big thing. And then just like focus and mindfulness, like really being able to focus when you need to, and finding some rehearsal or ritual or pattern that gets you from the decision making to the action in a consistent way. Those are big to me.
Absolutely, they all make very good sense. So. Totally, man. I did want to ask you this as a personal question. What's the scariest kind of situation you've ever been in paddling?
Man, I've had a couple of bad swims in 22 years. A couple that I was wondering if I was gonna survive. Just, I think really like the last. I mean, it's been a while, but I've had some where I was under for like a minute, swimming down like a big class 5 rapid and just wondering if I was going to make it. So it's pretty scary. Definitely reminds you of the exposure that you're in all the time. I think it's like having a car crash and realizing, oh my gosh, every time we're driving on a 2-lane road and cars are going both ways, like you're feet from death all the time. And I think having that experience in the boat is the same way. Definitely keeps you humble, respectful. I don't think anyone wants to have those experiences, but I think you can minimize the risk of having them, but you can't. It's a
Yeah.
non-zero.
When you're running class 5+, I guess it's kind of like riding a motorcycle or being in a car, like you said. It's only a matter of time, not if, but when.
Yeah,
There's
for sure.
no way you can do it ever without a mistake or whatever. So it makes total
Yeah.
sense. What's your favorite kayaking race? Would you say?
Man, okay, so I loved the Watauga race, and it's level dependent. So they don't have it very often anymore, but that's such a fun race because it is long, and they usually did a mass start, which was awesome because you get into hydro and there'd just be like boats back entering everywhere. I think my favorite one I do is the Russell Fork race. I love.
I agree, man.
Um, the green is the most magical race for sure, but it's so scary. And I think I like the Russell Fork race because there's no gorilla. There's no spot in
Yeah.
the Russell Fork race that's just terrifying. And I feel like I can push a little harder there. But the green's kind of the coolest one.
Yeah,
for sure.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, the Russell Fork's big, but like, there's not like spots where you go like flip over and break your back, like,
Yeah, there's no singular moment, and that's what the green is. It's a 4-minute paddle into the scariest moment of your life.
All right, we got like 45 seconds, so I want you to talk about your books, what they're about,
Yep.
where people can get them, and stuff like that.
Yeah, just comprehensive guide to the Southeast. It's really photo based. Lots of good stories, maps. It's and tutorials on how to chase the rain. But you can go to wolverinepublishing.com and buy them. They're there. They got plenty of them.
Didn't you
So
put out
I'm not gonna run out.
something new recently?
What's that?
Didn't you put out like another one something new recently?
Yeah. So we just put out our second edition. We ran out of all